We use technology as a tool, right? And Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are another tool in the toolbox. It's also a target, right? So it's something we can use to, we can disrupt our adversaries' use of it, and we can use these technologies to collect more intelligence, to gather more information about them. So yeah, I think, in that respect, Bitcoin is actually very similar to other sort of advanced technologies, and one that we have to prioritize.
How are you guys doing? Today we're here with Micheal Ellis. He's the Deputy Director of the CIA. And I thought a great place to start this conversation is everyone wants to understand the United States relationship with China. On one hand, they are an important trading partner. They rely on us. We rely on them. On the other hand, they are a competitor in the global arena. And at times they're even an adversary. And so how do you look at that relationship and understanding maybe there are things that we need from them, but also there's things that we should be worried about?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on today. It's great to chat a little bit about all of the work that Director Ratcliffe and I have been doing to execute on President Trump's agenda over the first 100 days. On China, I mean, you're absolutely right that this is a different kind of competition that we're in. It's not like the Cold War with the Soviet Union, which was a primarily political and military competition, because this is an economic competition. And as you know, a huge trading partner. But for too long, and I give President Trump huge credit for being the first to really realize this and point it out to people. China has been competing in an unfair way, right? That they were breaking the rules on trade, on intellectual property theft, on cybersecurity, right? I mean, you can go down the list of issues where it was not a fair competition with China. And President Trump was the first one to recognize that, right? If you look back at the national security strategies of prior presidents, Republican and Democrats alike, right? George Bush, Obama, they said that their policy, the official U.S. government policy, was to enable the peaceful rise of China, right? That was the government's policy. President Trump was the first one to come and say, no, that's not our policy anymore, right? That's absolutely wrong, right? We have to deal with them as a competitor and, as you know, in many respects, an adversary. And when we look around the world, obviously there are other threats. North Korea, Iran, Russia, ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups. They're all still significant threats that we can't take our eye off the ball on. But China is the existential threat to the United States on all of these realms, but particularly on the economic realm where it is a technological competition with them.
And how do you look at the CIA's role in evaluating that risk, maybe participating in some of the potential solutions, or maybe other things that people don't even realize that you guys are involved in?
Yeah. Well, obviously, a lot of the specifics I can't talk about in this format, but our aim is to give President Trump a decisive intelligence advantage, right? That whenever he is sitting down for a meeting with a foreign leader, whenever he is making a decision about U.S. foreign policy, that he has the best possible intelligence to inform his decision making. And that's true for China as well, right? That China is obviously a tough target, right? China is not an open society like ours. So it is a place that is, it is a hard target for the intelligence community to operate in and to collect on. But it's vitally important. And for Director Ratcliffe and I, it's a top priority that we be able to give the president the best possible intelligence on China and every other country in the world.
If I was to ask the internet, what's the number one question on China? I think they would say Taiwan. I know that many government kind of position on this is the strategic ambiguity and not really saying kind of a specific view. But maybe what you could help us understand is what are some of the considerations, right? You guys come to work every day. You're trying to understand this issue. As you mentioned, it's very difficult to get information sometimes. But again, you have two allies of the United States, but also at times you have one that is an adversary, another that is strategically important based on a number of different organizations. And so just talk through that China-Taiwan situation and kind of how you guys currently are thinking about it.
Yeah. I mean, you're right that it's obviously at the forefront of everyone's minds about China and Taiwan. It's also an issue where Taiwan is a great partner of the United States. It's economically significant as well, right? If you look at advanced semiconductor manufacturing, right? TSMC, that Taiwanese company, is one of the world leaders in semiconductors and is important to the electronic products that Americans use every day, right? So this is a significant challenge and one that we are certainly focusing on. In terms of a lot of the specifics, again, hard to get into too much in the unclassified realm, but it's it's part of a whole of government effort, alongside of the military, the State Department, other parts of the intelligence community to be ready for possible scenarios around China and Taiwan.
You mentioned semiconductors, which is kind of another key pillar of, I think, this administration and the CIA in general is technology.
Yes.
Technology feels like a great tool for many use cases, but it can be also a great weapon. And we've seen in recent conflict globally, things like drones that, I was in the military in 2008, 2009 deployed, and there was no worry whatsoever that there was going to be drone swarms coming after you. That seems to have changed very rapidly. And so how do you guys think of technology, both on the battlefield, but also as part of the intelligence gathering effort?
Yeah, we view technology as both a tool, right? As you say, there are phenomenal advances in how we can collect intelligence now, and analyze and synthesize it, especially when you think about like AI tools. And we've been working to integrate those into CIA. It's a target for us, right? This, like I mentioned, our competition with China is economic and technological in a way that is very different than how we took on the Soviet Union. And our aim is to give America a decisive advantage in that technological competition, right? To whether it's quantum computing or AI or semiconductors or biotechnology, that we want to secure a decisive American advantage in all of those fields against China. And obviously, that's not just for the CIA. There's all across the government a role for different departments and agencies to play, but it is one where I think the intelligence community has for too long ignored that mission, right? The IC was very good at, counting Soviet tanks, to be ready for a possible conflict in Europe in the Cold War. But, when you ask the IC to look at issues of, where Chinese companies are in artificial intelligence research, it's not one that we've been well positioned historically to think about. So that's something that we're looking to change, right? To devote more resources, to devote more personnel. And as part of that, we need to recruit some different kinds of people into CIA as well. We need more people with science and technology backgrounds, which is again, a little different than the global war on terrorism mindset of the last 20 years.
One of the things that has always struck me is the public sector government intelligence effort combined with the military has become more and more dependent over the years, whether it was Blackwater back in, a decade or two ago, Palantir today. These things take different shapes and sizes. Sometimes it's, personnel type stuff. Maybe it's weaponry. Other times it's software. How do you think about that public-private partnership to really get after what these, stated goals are for your organization?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot more that could be done there, to be candid. Certainly, when the government needs to be smarter about how it contracts. I mean, we could also talk about our DOGE efforts at CIA. We had Elon Musk over a few weeks ago
What was that like?
That was great. He brought little X with him.
I saw the photo.
Yeah. Well, little X, his middle name is A12 after the A12 ox cart, a CIA project.
Amazing.
So it was great to be able to show him that. Show little X's plane.
Yeah.
Because we have one, obviously decommissioned, out, on the CIA campus, at Langley.
No, but like when a guy like that comes into CIA, right? And he's there specifically, let's slash cost, let's, find all the waste and abuse, et cetera. You all also have a very important mission to go and gather intelligence and inform, our leaders so that they have that tactical advantage. How do you think about the balance there between rooting out some of the, the waste, but also still doing your mission?
Yeah. Well, the reason we asked him to come in was because, we need to find that waste. Look, it's a government agency like every government agency. There's always things that we could be doing better. Areas where, we could be more efficient and smarter with our spending. And by doing that, not only is it going to open up resources that we can deploy to higher priority problem sets, right? But also, it makes us more agile as an organization, right? That we can respond more quickly and more nimbly to what the president needs of CIA. Mm-hmm. So, the idea is, yes, we're going to be, looking for waste and cutting spending at CIA. But it's with the goal of having a more efficient and effective CIA, that we can use to help deliver that intelligence advantage to the president.
And is that where areas like artificial intelligence and, these new models that are coming out and all that kind of stuff, as you guys embrace that, we've seen it work in the private sector with the Palantirs of the world, but also you guys think that you can go and use those same technologies internally?
Absolutely. And again, it's critical that we do so because our adversaries are certainly going to be making use of those technologies as well. And you can think of an enormous amount of applications for these in the intelligence community, whether it's analyzing information, right, to be able to identify patterns that human analysts would take hundreds, if not thousands of hours to identify, or in the operational tradecraft of CIA officers collecting intelligence, right? There's enormous potential in these new technologies. You also mentioned earlier, UAVs, right? On the battlefield in Ukraine, I think you're right that they are revolutionizing warfare. And that's an area where by studying what's going on in these other conflicts around the world, we can bring those lessons back, help share them with the military, make sure that the United States is ready for that next conflict.
I think that I will get tomatoes thrown at me if I don't ask you about Bitcoin. I know that it's kind of this unique asset that is somewhat outside the system, but being pulled more and more in every day with Wall Street embracing it. I think criminals thought they could use it as anonymous payments. Now it seems like law enforcement is very excited when people use Bitcoin because they can trace it. How are you and the CIA thinking about Bitcoin?
Today's episode is sponsored by Figure Markets, the place you go to earn yield and borrow against your Bitcoin and Ethereum. Figure Markets crypto-backed loans let you borrow against your Bitcoin or Ethereum with up to a 75% loan-to-value ratio. That's one of the highest in the industry. Whether you're looking to reinvest and double back down into more Bitcoin, cover everyday life expenses, or just have cash on the hand, these loans make it simple. Interest rates start as low as 12.5% with no credit checks, no long applications, and no prepayment penalties. Are you worried about using your Bitcoin as collateral to someone you don't know? Figure Markets is a subsidiary of Figure, the largest non-bank HELOC lender in the United States with over $14 billion of home equity unlocked and founded by Mike Cagney, who founded SoFi. Sign up today at figure.com/pomp and download their app to explore all their offers. Explore crypto, loans, earning opportunities, and more with Figure. Go to figure.com/pomp.
Are you looking for a simple way to earn Bitcoin rewards every single day? At Simple Mining, we help people mine Bitcoin, even if you're brand new. We're a vertically integrated Bitcoin mining company based in Cedar Falls, Iowa, offering a premium white glove hosting service that helps you maximize your mining profitability. With over 500 clients worldwide, we manage over 15,000 machines across our sites. Our facilities are staffed 7 days a week, and we fix most on-site issues in under 48 hours. In fact, we can repair more than 2,000 hash boards each month in our dedicated repair center, ensuring your miners run smoothly. Want to see it firsthand? Tour our mining sites, either in person or online, anytime. Plus, for your first year of mining, we cover all repairs, no questions asked. We bill you for the exact time your miners are running, and you can pause whenever you want. Need to buy or sell? Our exclusive miner marketplace gives you the freedom to trade on your schedule. You'll even have a custom dashboard to track your miner stats in real time, and if you're thinking about running your operation like a business, our tax team can guide you through the depreciation advantages. Ready to grow your Bitcoin stack? Visit simplemining.io.
How are you and the CIA thinking about Bitcoin?
Well, just like law enforcement, I guess, we are excited as well because, as you know, people may have thought Bitcoin was anonymous, but I'd say it's pseudonymous, right? It's not truly anonymous. And there's a lot of work that we do with law enforcement, obviously, to try to track, illicit crypto payments by bad actors. I mean, look, bad actors, whether they're drug cartels or terrorist groups or, outlaw regimes, use cryptocurrency, but they use other tools as well, right?
They use dollars in cars.
Right. They used toner cartridges for their printers, right? It doesn't mean we say we should ban all of those, right? No, I mean, look, Bitcoin is here to stay. Cryptocurrency is here to stay. As you know, more and more institutions are adopting it, and I think that's a great trend. And one that this administration has obviously been leaning forward into. It's another area of technological competition where we need to make sure the United States is well positioned against China and other adversaries. We need to make sure that we are a leader in these fields internationally and not a laggard. And there's, as you know, tremendous potential for law enforcement and intelligence community to be able to, use cryptocurrency to help track what our adversaries are doing and disrupt it.
One of the things I always am shocked by is people talk about it as a tool for the bad people.
Right.
but also it could be a tool for the good people as well, right? And so whether it's Bitcoin or stable coins or anything else, CIA has a lot of payments probably that are going all over the world, as do many large organizations. And so is that how you guys kind of use as a framework for all of technology, is like it can be a tool or it can be a weapon against us, and we want to be good at using it, but also understand how our enemies are using it against us?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned, right, we use technology as a tool, right? And Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are another tool in the toolbox. It's also a target, right? So it's something we can use to, we can disrupt our adversaries' use of it, and we can use these technologies to collect more intelligence, to gather more information about them. So yeah, I think, in that respect, Bitcoin is actually very similar to other sort of advanced technologies, and one that we have to prioritize. And again, it comes back to, there's a little bit of a generational shift, and a cultural shift going on that Director Ratcliffe and I are leading the way on at CIA right now. Not everyone in the government has these attitudes around new technologies, right? People are sort of trapped in older mindsets sometimes. We have to break through that and realize, this isn't just this idea that cryptocurrency is for people with something to hide. That's just not right.
You sound like the in-house Bitcoiner. Let's talk about the cartels before I let you go. Obviously, that has been a huge focus of this administration, both at the southern border, but also fentanyl and illegal drugs. And just talk about kind of that entire effort of a group that obviously has kind of run wild for a very long time, and now seems that that's not going to be the case anymore.
That's right. So, it all starts with the president's agenda, right? And he has promised the total elimination of the cartels, right? That's his priority. That is what we are seeking to achieve. And we're going to do it. And it's going to be a whole of government effort, right? There's a role for all parts of the government in taking on this threat. Now, obviously, there's a huge law enforcement role. And traditionally, I think the intelligence community took a backseat to law enforcement. We said, oh, well, this is more of a domestic issue. That's not our concern. But when you look at, these deadly drug flows, take fentanyl, right? The precursor chemicals are starting in China. They're being shipped to Mexico and other places in Latin America. They're being synthesized there and smuggled across our borders. This is an international problem as well. And in that respect, I think it's actually very similar to the counterterrorism threat that CIA has been very successfully fighting for the past 2 decades. These are networks, obviously different motivations, different structures of the networks, right? But they are, networks that are outside the United States seeking to bring a threat into the United States. And we need to make sure there are no gaps between intelligence and law enforcement communities in disrupting those networks before the threat reaches our borders.
And what about partnership? And partnership usually is kind of an American idea. We want to partner with people around the world. But one of the things I've heard talked about over and over again is this idea that whether it's the cartels or other organizations actually partnering up with some of our adversaries. And during the campaign, as one example, there was talk of certain weaponry that was actually brought into the U.S. through the porous southern border. And whether that report is correct or not, I don't know. But it does feel like it's not hard to start to connect dots where if you're an adversary of the United States and there's groups that seem to have an in right in the United States, you may want to work with them. And so how do you guys think about, kind of that global alliance?
And it's one of the reasons that, having a secure border is so critical. I actually went down to the border last month. I went to San Diego and visited with our immigration and law enforcement counterparts there to, learn about the work that they were doing, and also to see the differences in how the border is now secure compared to just a few months ago. But when we think about these threats, right? To talk about like the precursor chemicals are starting in China, right? There is an avenue here for maybe an avenue for cooperation with China, right? That they need to stop the flow of these precursor chemicals. There's also opportunities to partner with countries in the region, the Western Hemisphere, right? Look at Mexico. They don't want the cartels in their country. They don't want the violence, the corruption. So it's working with them as well to help rid this deadly scourge from our hemisphere. And I think there's a role for CIA and the rest of the intelligence community. For too long, we viewed this as somebody else's problem. CIA was busy with China and Russia and terrorist groups, right? Counter narcotics. That's for the FBI or for DHS. Well, that attitude is over, right? Director Ratcliffe recently announced that we have merged our counter-narcotics center of CIA into a new America and counter-narcotics mission center, really elevating the prioritization increasing the resources, attracting the best personnel for that mission, because this isn't going to be an afterthought anymore. This is, again, a top priority for the president. So it's something that CIA is going to deliver on.
When you come to work every day, what do you pay attention to? Are you reading the headlines or other KPIs and data points?
Yeah.
What? How do you think of your day and highest prioritization, but also whether you're making progress or not?
Yeah, it's tough because some of these are longer term efforts where the progress can it can be one 2 steps forward, 1 step back at times, right? Obviously, that the headlines always get things even before the intelligence community does, right? And that's the evolution of new media, right? Like places like X, and other social media platforms can be fantastic sources for aggregating open source information. And goes back to what we were talking about the agency needs to be better about utilizing some of this technology. But obviously I read the intel briefings too. We make sure that we're delivering that best possible intelligence for the president. And we have a lot of phenomenal men and women in the intelligence community who are working to carry out that mission. We obviously need to make sure that we avoid any of the politicization, any of the bias. Those things are over. There's no tolerance for that. But it's when we're talking about information flow, I try to absorb as much as possible, and then use it to help advise the policymakers, help advise the president on the decisions he has to make.
Well, I think you guys are doing a fantastic job. We're excited that you guys are taking on so many of these hard challenges, and we'll definitely do it again in the future.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely.